What's up, Ty?
Back amongst royalty.
Oh, whatever.
Ty Norris, welcome.
Man, this is great. What a setup.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun here.
I've noticed that.
Man, you look great. Staying in good health.
It's a challenge, man. The clock keeps ticking, and every time I look around, there's a line in that Aerosmith song. Every time I look in the mirror, these old lines keep getting clearer. Yeah, I now know what he means.
Oh yeah. Well, it's good to see you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate the Norris out here.
Yeah.
You didn't even know it was there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's for you.
Yeah, I see that. I was a longtime sponsor. Yeah, I feel like I've been around that long.
Yeah. No kidding.
You have been around a long time. When we're looking at these notes, we got a lot to cover, don't
Yeah.
we?
Oh my gosh.
So, I know you from your time at DEI.
Yes, sir.
You held a few different positions there, but most notably, I guess, general manager.
Yes.
Kind of the you were over the top of all things racing.
Yes.
For the most part.
Yeah.
What other jobs did you have there?
Well, when I started, actually when Dale came to me about coming on board, it was actually the 1996 All-Star race.
Yeah.
He and Terry Labonte were racing, and he almost got wrecked, and then Michael ended up winning the race. And afterwards, he said, come up to the condo. And I got up there, and he said, my company's a runaway train, hop on. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? And he goes, we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So my title must have been We Figured Out. So, but generally it was just start the company, help him get everything established, like as a business, right? Because everybody's racers, but now you just got to be a business at some point. And so sponsorships were important, and manufacturer was important, and dealing with all that stuff, and then personnel and contracts and all that. So
you were at the forefront of all that right out of the gate. This is
Out of the
around the time Jeff Green was probably driving the Xfinity car at that time, and it was turning into more than just a fun little side project of Dad's as it had been for years.
Yeah.
You also had the same sort of role at Michael's team.
Yep.
And now you're at Trackhouse.
Yes.
With the similar role.
Similar role, yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's going well. Like really good.
Yeah, it's
You probably want it to go better, but honestly, man, like that team has had some great runs.
Yeah, what's really crazy about. Thank you for that. First of all, it's nice it's been recognized that the team's doing well. I don't know what people's expectations were, but Justin Marks and I sat in California, summer of 2019, and whiteboarded this whole idea and everything about it, even into the next gen. And it was amazing when we got to the Daytona 500 this year. And we looked at that basically a picture of that whiteboard, and we're like, every one of these boxes has been checked. We didn't know who was going to fill all those boxes and how it was going to work and who our partner was going to be. But it's really his vision, and it's come to life. And I'm very proud to be a part of like pulling it together. But I give a lot of credit to the alliance we have with Chevrolet and Richard Childress Racing, because they took a lot of we decided we didn't want to be manufacturers. We want to manufacture and build things. That's what they do. They've done it for 40 years, 50 years. Let them do what they're best at. We'll find sponsorships. We'll market ourselves, and then we'll blend these cultures together. And fortunately, 11 races into it, it's been I'd say overall a success. But obviously, like you're saying, then you get hungry. Almost want to race at Bristol, and you're like, oh, we can do this, and he's okay, calm down a little bit.
Yeah,
calm down a little bit. So.
Explain who Justin is.
So Justin Marks, his family's from California. They're been in Silicon Valley for years, and Justin decided he wanted to race for a living, and he wanted to try he raced for 20 years. He ran IMSA, and he ran for Acura and Porsche and a bunch of other groups, and then he got his chance at NASCAR, and he ran some truck series, and he actually won the Xfinity Series with Chip Ganassi 1 year, and just has huge passion for racing. What I did not expect when I sat down with him was just how smart he is about the industry, first of all, and second, what his passion is for it. Like he loves racing probably more than anything, other than his girls and his wife, obviously. But I mean, he loves racing, and he wanted to dive in to the deep end of the pool and said, I'm looking at the Cup Series. I don't want to just mess around. He says, my family's, they do things big, and that's what I want to do.
You live in Nashville, though, don't you?
Yeah, that was one of the things. He was in California. I was in Charlotte. I've been here for 30 years, and he was in California. And he said, I want to start this company. I want to start building this whole culture that blends sport and entertainment. And I need to figure out a place to do it. And he thought about Austin. He thought about Nashville. And he landed in Nashville. And he called me up, and he's like, do you want to come out here? And I was like, yeah, I'll move right now.
So you moved to Nashville for the race team.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I moved to Nashville for the race team to go there and be shoulder to shoulder with him, really, to kind of get everything started, because it would be hard. Right now, right at the time, it's just two of us, you know. Yeah. And so we're like, we got to build this up, and I decided I was divorced, decided I was going to go over there, and that's what I was going to do.
What does the space look like where you are?
In Nashville? This space is about the size of this, you know, and with the intent, someday we'd have a team there in Nashville.
Yeah. But your cars and everything are over at RCR. Yeah,
and we did a partnership with RCR, and to be on that floor to really take advantage of all the processes and everything that you have to build out, and didn't have to buy a bunch of toolboxes and nut and bolt bins. Like, those guys had all that stuff, so that's what we did.
Makes really, really good sense. Really smart way to sort of build a team off the ground. And obviously, you just don't snap your fingers and have a shop and all the stuff.
I mean, listen,
20 million.
No one was as influential as your dad when he was starting his team, and look how long it took us to get, out of our own way.
Yeah.
And we had a tremendous amount of money to back it. And then we go to Michael Waltrip, and we had all the Toyota support, ungodly amounts of money to go out, and we were a disaster for a couple years until we finally got our feet under us, and then we were really, I'd say, you got to a pretty solid spot. So I just told Justin, I'm like, let's not make these same mistakes without burning all this cash. There are a lot of teams that are going to need what we want, and we can bring things to them that they need, and let's see if we can find a partner, and RCR was the one.
So let's talk about your beginnings. Central North Carolina. Your dad was in the Air Force.
Yeah, my dad was he was in the Air Force, and we were in a little mill town in Irwin, North Carolina. They had a big old cotton factory there, and that's what everybody in the town did. And my grandmother started working at the cotton mill when she was 11, and she worked there until she was 65 or whenever she retired, and they lived in the same house their whole lives, in it was like 4 rooms, and the entire family grew up going to grandma's house. I went to her house for Christmas until I was 27, 28 years old, and we just all piled in there and laid around and quilt stuff. But that was sort of the beginnings. And my dad was in the Air Force, and so I was born on an Air Force base, and lived in Sumter, South Carolina until I was 12. They loved racing. That's what my grandfather and my dad did not get along that great. The one thing that they did get along doing was racing. Going to races. They'd go to Rockingham and Darlington and stuff. And so the first track I ever walked into, I was probably 6 or 7 years old, was Darlington, and bought a David Pearson T-shirt. So that was my first introduction to it. So we moved to Delaware. No one really knew that much about racing. And so when I was living up there, I wanted to be a sports writer. And
why did you want to do that?
I had a good friend. His brother was a sports writer, and I just played sports, and so I always knew I was going to be
very
good.
Athletic.
I was going to be good enough to. Yeah.
You were athletic.
Yeah.
So what sports did you play?
I played basketball. Was my best sport. I played football. I was captain on the defense, but I was terrible. I don't know why. I was probably the worst player on there. I was really good at baseball, but my dad wouldn't let me play baseball, and so for some reason he wouldn't let me play, or couldn't get signed up. So it said play tennis, and ended up playing tennis, and I went to the state semifinals. I just pick it up and just go, and so I just played all sports just because that's what we did. You didn't have a specific sport then; you played everything you could.
Yeah.
And so I loved it, and I still try to stay pretty active.
Sports writer.
So I wanted to be a sports writer because I wanted to cover it, because I thought I knew it.
You wanted to cover NASCAR.
Yeah.
Racing.
Well, I wanted to cover professional sports.
Yeah.
Right. In Delaware, racing came to town twice a year, and not a lot of people there knew what was going on with the sport. So I was like, I know who these guys are. I kind of know. I've followed them on MRN more than anything else, Yeah. And so I was 19 years old, and I went out and I was a pit reporter. And
for who?
For Delaware State News. And I remember being in the pits at Dover, and you couldn't have a crossover then, so you'd sit there for 6 hours and interview drivers when they would blow up or crash or whatever, and go get some quotes. And my best quote, the best thing I ever did, a quote I ever got in there was Harry Gant finished second to Bill Elliott one year. And I went up there to talk to him about the race, and he goes, "Hell, finishing second to Bill's this year is like winning." He goes, "We're going to get a trophy." I was like, so it was a great quote. And so,
anyway,
this
was around in the early 80s.
Yeah, I'd say that was probably 84 or so, in that area, that era.
Were you in college?
Yeah, I was a sophomore between my sophomore and junior years at Delaware State University.
Right across the street, almost. Right?
Yeah, I'd been accepted and had roommate and everything all set up to go to the University of Delaware with all my friends. And then the bill came, and my dad came to me, and he was like, "What's this for?" And I said, "Well, it's for tuition and room and board." And he's like, I don't. You need to figure out something else because I don't have it. And it was August, everybody was going, so I ended up having to punt, and I punted and went to Delaware State, and it was right down the street, and commuted and saved money, and so
wow,
yeah, it all kind of happened.
Was that frustrating?
Well, at the time, of course, it's frustrating because all your friends are doing it, right? And I remember one time, and my dad passed about 2 years ago, but so I can say this without getting him mad. I remember driving down the street, and I pointed over to a friend's house, and I'm like, well, his dad works over at the lumber yard, and they can afford for him to go. And my dad came across the truck and power drove me in my chest, and he said, "Don't you ever compare me to another man."
Yeah, you had it coming.
And I was like, "Yes, sir." And I've carried that message all the way through, And so it's just it's one of those moments.
In 1990, you were done covering races for the Delaware State News. You went and took a job with R.J. Reynolds.
Yeah, it was. I was in in the press box, and a guy named Bob Kelly came up to me and he said, "Hey, I just read this big old tab that you guys just special section. There's 32 pages. Your bylines on every one of these." And I was like, "Yeah." I laid it out. I wrote the stories. I did all the interviews. I did the whole thing. And he said, "Are you interested in traveling? And you interested in public relations?" And I was like, "I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about." And he goes, "Well, I want you to come down to Winston-Salem and interview for the job." And so I was like, "Sure." So I borrowed a friend's car. I drove down. I actually had a flat tire and fixed it, and I made it all the way to Winston-Salem when I fixed a flat. And I remember I didn't have a suit, so I borrowed a suit from my buddy, and I remember wearing a pink shirt because that's all I had. And I was like, "Damn, they're not going to hire me with a pink shirt."
R.J. Reynolds,
yeah,
it's
R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company, right? You understand that, right? And then it was like $25 to go get a new shirt, and I just didn't have the money to go do it. So we just went down there and interviewed, and got the job and started right away in 1990.
You saw the difference between R.J. Reynolds' salary and what a sports writer is going to make. And that was the decision, wasn't it?
So we were making $15,500, me and my buddy. And I remember one night he goes, "Tonight we're partying like we make 15.6."
So you've got from 1990 to 1996 when Dad talks to you about coming to work for him.
Yeah.
What all happened in those 6 years that got you that opportunity? How did you create that relationship with Dad?
Yeah, I've thought about this obviously a tremendous amount because what he has meant to me personally through my whole life. And I remember, so I started in 1990, and remember Dale won the championship. I was there at R.J. Earnhardt for almost 5 years, and he won the championship 90, 91, 93, 94. And so as the champion, I was the representative for Winston. And so about a year and a half, so we'd go up to, like my first time I went up to the Waldorf and stayed in the presidential suite, or didn't stay there, but I went up to the presidential suite and got him all doing all his media stuff, and that was my job. It's kind of like getting from point A to point B. And he just kept saying things to me like, "I really like you, man. I like you." I didn't know why. I mean, he's much older. He's 14, 15 years older, and I was like, I'm not sure why he likes me, but that's fun. And so he kept telling me, like in 1990, he told me, "So you're going to come work for me?" And because I remember it was specific. We were in a limo with a guy named Jody Davis, the catcher.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And he was his
From
buddy.
the Braves, yeah.
And he was just like, "Man, I'm gonna hire that guy. What do you think?" And he was like, "I don't know." And I looked at him. I said, "You can't afford me." I was knocking out 30 grand. Like, you can't afford me. And he was just like he just kind of laughed, and we joked about it for years. But we ended up doing a lot of things together. And so like I'd say it's like 93 or so, maybe 92 or 93. He called me and he said, "I just bought this yacht, and it's called Sunday Money, He said, "I'm going to fly you and my wife at the time, Beth. We're going to fly down to the Bahamas with Michael and Buffy." And I was like, okay. It just kind of seemed like a strange group of people.
So weird, yeah.
And we got down there, and we ended up forming this friendship, and it was like that forever. I mean, I probably went on vacation from 1993 till the day he passed. I was on vacation with him every summer. I was like, where am I going for vacation this year? I was like, I don't know, ask Dale. I don't know. And it just formed a relationship. I don't know why it started that way, except one time I do remember. We were up in where the captain's, driving the boat, and we were out there, and Teresa and Buffy and Beth were all laying out in their bikinis, and he looked at me, goes, "Understand why I asked you guys to come now?"
What? I know you say you don't know why he took a liking to you, but what was the key to developing that type of relationship with Dale Earnhardt back at that time when he was on top of the world?
I think everybody. One of the things that I've always been able to do this is just look. Everyone's a human being first. And then they have a title. That goes from the President of the United States to Pitbull, to Dale Earnhardt, Dale Jr., Mike Davis. Like, everybody's a human being. You treat everybody the same. And, I certainly respected what he was doing, but we had more personal time than we had as much as we had professional time. And so when you build that sort of personal time relationship, when you call on somebody, it's like, hey, I need a favor, or we need you to do something. He was like, yeah, I'll do it for you. And so when I started seeing that, so about 92, RJR went through cuts, and I was the last guy there. Like, I was like, I'm surely cut. There were like 58 people, and they're cutting down to like 38 or 40. And I'm like, that's 18 people. There's no way they're keeping the newest guy. And Dale pulled T. Wayne Robinson off to the side, and he said, I don't care what you're doing, but that guy stays.
Ooh.
And T. Wayne came to me. He said, "What'd you do to Dale?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Is he mad?" And he goes, "No." He told me the story, and I cheered up. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then I felt bad for all these other employees who were there. But Dale had a lot of influence, and I very rarely shared that because, like, he saved me. And I could have been back in Delaware trying to figure out my next sports writing job or something. But he did that, and I forever was loyal because of it.
What's this up at the presidential suite at the banquet in the Waldorf? This note about him messing with somebody while they were sleeping.
I don't know about the sleeping part, but there's a couple stories. I don't know if you want the R-rated one or not, but
yeah, we do.
Yeah, okay.
Schultz has got something to add.
No, I just heard the story on a different podcast he was on. It was very funny about messing with
you talking about when he hung me out that balcony or hung me out the window?
Oh, I did not hear that.
Yeah.
But I think you should tell it.
So there's
What the heck happened?
There's two Waldorf stories. So when Dale got there to the suite, it was like 4 bedrooms. And I remember that's where I met you first time. I think you were like 14, 15, 16 years old, whatever. And up there in the Waldorf and hanging out on the couch. And I remember him getting mad at you and yelling at you about it. But we were up there hanging out at night, and I made a joke to him. He said, he came back from dinner and his shirt was really tight. And I said, man, that button's going to come flying off of there. And he goes, F you, started yelling at me. And then he and Grant Lynch grabbed me, and Hank Jones was there, and they grabbed me, and we were on the 35th floor, and they opened up the window and they hung me out the window, so much so that I could see the sidewalk.
Jesus.
And I was scrambling at first, but then I was like, we were a little juiced up at that point. And I was thinking, yeah, just hold on tight. And Grant and Dale were probably strong enough, and I was, 170 pounds at the time. And they hung me out, and I was just like, all right, you guys win. They pulled me back in. He said, don't ever talk about me. And I was like, all right, I'm good. And then I don't know if you guys are talking about are you talking about the rocking chair?
I was the one about Dale was sleeping, and Dale Sr. came in and kind of woke him up. That's the one I heard, but tell any stories you have.
Oh, well, the only story I was talking about with Dale Jr. was we came in from some sort of event, PR press event or something, and you and Kelly had just arrived, and it's the presidential suite and all that stuff's going on. You got the butler Ishmael around, and here's Dale Jr. asleep on the couch in the middle of the living room in the middle of the day, and Dale came in and just almost threw you off the couch, started yelling at you, and that's the first time I really spent any time around that father-son relationship, and I didn't really know you that well, and I didn't know you at all, really, and I was like, man, that's harsh.
Yeah. He was
He was, man. He was so hard on you, and he carried it for a long time. He was so hard on you. That was the first time I saw it. And then, I just don't know that I could ever be that hard on, like, that mean to my kids.
Yeah.
But you seem to expect it.
Oh yeah. He was tough.
But I don't understand what the problem was, other than being asleep on a couch. I mean, like, was it just the time of day? What was the situation?
People were around.
Dad is probably running wide open from thing to thing, busy, and he walks in and his son's sleeping on the couch in the middle of the presidential suite in New York City. And he probably was like, if I'm busting my ass, you're not going to be sleeping on this couch all day.
All right, so let's we'll get away from the relations and we'll go back to pre-96. You had you're working for RJR.
Mm-hmm.
When do you start working with race teams, and who was that with?
Yeah, so Felix Sabatos asked me to go work for him because he was making some changes, and he asked me to come be his GM.
And were you qualified for that?
Hell no.
Okay.
I wasn't sure I was qualified for the job. I had a DEI. I wasn't sure I was qualified when I got to Michael Waltrip. I may not quite be qualified now. But I was just like, there's no way I was qualified for that job. But he wanted somebody to take care of Kyle Petty. And there's a lot of stuff going on with Kyle, and Mellow Yellow was there and everything. And so he hired me on to take on this role. And I'm like, I'm not sure why he gave me the GM role. Like, it was really a marketing request, but it became GM because it was running the business, right? And so Felix and I talked about it, and he was like, and he's going, Tyrone, hey, Tyrone, he goes, I'll double your salary, and I'll give you a car, and I'll move you to Charlotte, and you can stay in my condo. And I was like, well, I mean.
All this sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm like, let's do it. And then I got down there, and about a month later, I remember coming home, and I was bawling.
Why?
Because RJ are my family.
Yeah.
They were my family. And when I got to a race team, I had no idea how much backstabbing happened, how much trouble there. I mean, everybody was always bitching about the other person, and you were just, all of a sudden, you were managing things. I came from a culture of pulling the rope in the same direction. Then whether you were the president of the company or the assistant manager who had just been hired, I got treated like T. Wayne Robertson got treated by Jeff Burton's guy. When I got that race team, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even Felix's fault. It was just a culture.
Yeah.
And so, man, it was tough. And I didn't like it. And so Dale came to me. In fact, Dale came to me at Dover, and he came and pulled me off the side, and he said, you learn everything you can learn, and I'm going to come get you when it's time.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. So I did what I could do.
You've been a spotter at times. You're a spotter for me. You were spotted for Kyle. Was that your first time spotting for Kyle? You were testing at Daytona?
Yeah, we were testing at Daytona, and they were like, man, Brett Bodine spun on the front straightaway during testing by himself, and Kyle almost hit him. And Kyle starts yelling. He's like, we got to get some up here to like just pay attention. What's going on? And so looking around like, who's not doing anything? And I'm like, me. I mean, I'm just down here, I'm reporting back to, ownership, and which everybody hated anyway. And so I'm like, I'll go do something. So I go up on top of the tower, and I am shaking. No. And I'm like, it wasn't even like the tower. It was like the inside photo tower. And I'm shaking, and I'm trying to tell him what's going on, and they're in the pack, and all this kind of stuff's going on. And Kyle finally said, Ty, shut up. And he said, just give me a car color. Stop trying to say, tell me orange car, pink car. I don't care what you say. Say something, but don't try to talk. I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yellow on your inside.
Yeah. I've been yelled at by several people.
So you started working at DEI. You worked there from 96 to 04?
Yeah.
And I mean, that was a roller coaster.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean, go ahead and let's dump it out. Let's dump it. Let's dump that bucket all over this table.
I need about 17 hours.
We got it.
I need to lay down on the couch, go through my therapy.
Yeah. So
go ahead, ask. You can ask and I'll answer.
My my memory of my impression of you out of the gate was one of Dad's most trusted lieutenants, right? You definitely aren't overstating the relationship that you had with Dad, and he looked at you as as someone that was going to help him make this thing what he wanted it to happen, and everything was going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and things were amazing. And your dad didn't go out there and pilfer all the best people from all the teams. He was going to do that over a long, slow period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody that if he walked over to any organization and said to a fab guy, an engine guy, or anybody and said, "I need you,"
Yeah.
he'd say more than that, but he would tell them, and they would come.
Right.
We were going to have the best people.
Yeah.
We had the best sponsorships, the biggest sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
This machine was going to be unstoppable.
Yeah.
And then he died.
Right.
And all that changed immediately.
Yeah.
I remember when we all, after Dad was killed, almost immediately, we all got together, figuratively, and decided we're just going to keep going.
Yep.
Whatever that means, right? And we did. And we did all right. 04 was our best year.
Yeah.
But that was, for me, 04 was the last year.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because I left at the beginning of 04, and I'm glad we set you off in a good place, and then you were like, "Damn, what happened?"
Things went bad.
But I got several things to really kind of go through there. You're right. Your dad had the vision, and he just needed someone to execute it. And as a lieutenant, that's what I did. And I reported to him what was going on. He told me every day, like your dad would always be like, "No first." I'm like, "Well, we're thinking about this." And he'd go, "Nah, I don't want to do that." And he's like, "Why?" And he was like, "Well, because we want to do this." And he's like, "Okay, now let's do that." So he'd make you think, or at least maybe made me think. I don't know if it's that way for everybody, but he would go, "Okay, well, just kind of justify it." And so he taught me, and I always say he was the valedictorian of the University of Common Sense. And so he was just street smart. So, and then business savvy, of course. And listen, let's not all put him on the pedestal that he was flawless. The man was not flawless. No. We all know that, and we all know that in a big way. But he had a vision, and he let you get out there and get after it and go get it done. And people quite often knew that if I was saying something, or I was talking about something, or I was recruiting or whatever, they knew basically I'm repeating Dale's words, right? You don't go rogue on Dale Earnhardt. So I had that credibility just because I was getting it done what he needed me to get done. Once he was gone, I thought I was still doing that. And when I have a word that I describe DEI as splintered. It became totally splintered. It became, this guy thinks he should run it. It's Game of Thrones, man. It was Game of Thrones. It was like, this guy needs a crown. No, this guy needs a crown. This guy needs a crown. We were like, no. Who needs a crown? Like, no one needs a crown. No one needs a throne. No one, like, just do our jobs. And we didn't have the go-to. I mean, I got into a big argument with Tony Uri when Dale was around about just whatever you argue with Tony Uri about. Sure. I mean, it was just something, it was big, and it blew up, and he threw an FU at me, and I threw an FU at him. And so Dale grabbed us, and he brought us up to lunch up in the trophy room, and he sat down, and he's like, "What were you saying about Ty again? Say it right here." He came down here and was trying to do this, and he goes, "Well, here's why he did that." And he goes, "Ty, say what you were talking about Tony." And I'm like, "Well, I mean, he won't listen, like, so he made us talk. And then, we were never close buddies or anything, but we talked it out. We didn't have that afterwards. When someone wanted to talk about this guy, he found a click, and this guy found a click, and that guy found a click, and next thing you know, we had all these people. And then, just like paranoia fell into Teresa, quite honestly, paranoia was like, who's trying to get Dale's money, who's trying to get our money, who's trying to get this power. It fell across the whole company, and it splintered bad. And the only person that could have saved it would have been you, but she didn't let you do that. And that was a disappointment for what we'd pulled together.
Were you aware of all this?
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of it, but ignoring it at the same time. In my mind, like, this is, you're our guest, and I want to give you every opportunity to comment on this. Just interrupt any second. But in my mind, that I lost all confidence in this becoming what Dad wanted it to be when he died. It was never we could try, and we had a hell of a 04 was awesome. I mean, won 6 races, cars were fast, cars got power, we're winning plate races and all the things. I mean, on paper, we had good success. But I just knew that it was, without him here to help us keep that vision heading in that direction, we just weren't going to hit that target. We might end up over here or close or over here, but it wasn't going to be exactly what he had thought, right, and what he wanted. And all of us wanted his common sense. His street smarts was so helpful for me in my life, my personal life, your personal life. He just helped you make sure you're not to, put your foot in a bucket of shit. And we all missed that, and I knew we were going to make mistakes, and I didn't know how long we could sustain the momentum we had and the sponsorship support that we had and the relationships that we had created. That was all going to be harder to keep. And but I was, we just kind of just started. We just kept going forward, and if that meant, whatever that meant, right? And
it's like it's like we were propelled.
Yes, we were cast out.
We were propelled right from the we were launched from the pad, and it was like we're gonna go for a while. And we went 2002, 2003, 2004, and it was like eventually we're gonna come back to Earth.
Yes,
because we didn't have any more fuel.
That's right. It's like a rocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Shot up in the air.
But because we had a tremendous amount of on-track success, despite ourselves, after Dale passed away, and that's why I kind of tell people, like, man, we actually did a lot of great things after he passed, but it was not sustainable. No. And I'm talking about myself personally, because I've had a lot of days in the mirror, personally and professionally. I had a lot of days in the mirror, and I look back on some of the things I did. I'm like, I would have punched myself. I think I was a total time, and it was an ego thing. It was like, I'm like, we're going to do this, and I would pound my fist and say, damn it, this is how we're going to do it. And everybody's like, who the who are you? Shut up! Like, and then I'm like, well, what? And and then I would bow up, and so I've always told people, I said, if you're nice to me, I'm nicer to you.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're mean to me, I'm meaner to you.
Yeah.
You punch me, I'll punch you harder.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I'm that way. I'm just built that way.
Yeah.
And when people were coming at me, I was bowed up.
Yeah.
And then people were like, what a
I remember that. You were, and it was. You're right. It's exactly. It was in your personality. I don't know how much you've changed. I'm sure everybody changes and becomes better versions of themselves. I hope, but I remember that. Like I remember going into your office and having some of the best conversations and feeling like, man, we are on the same damn page. We both got the same feeling about this. And then I remember days going into your office and going, this couldn't have ground, the gears couldn't have ground any harder against each other. Like we're pulling against each other.
Yeah.
And you were, I think you were, I kind of felt bad for you because there were some times when you felt like the whole place was against you. Then you had Teresa over the top of all of it, kind of making things difficult to understand. Didn't know, it was just, she was, you probably had her ear all the time, but maybe you didn't, I don't know. But the information from her and what direction she wanted this to go, she wasn't as open about that as Dad was, right? Dad was, here's my vision, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody on the same page. And Teresa wasn't stand up in front and tell a story, right?
Yeah.
And tell us what's about to happen.
Yeah.
She was behind the curtain and quiet.
Literally.
Yes.
Literally behind the curtain.
And so I know you had more conversations with her, but anyhow, it was hard. And I know this isn't doing a good job of describing it, but there were days when I'd walk into your office and it was the freaking mood in there was so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then there were days when it was complete opposite.
Yeah.
And
it's I remember him very well, and I because I'd hear all the bitch and whine and complaining and all this kind of stuff that's going on. Some of it was about you and not paying attention and not being around, not doing this and being out partying or whatever they were wanting to bitch about that day. And so who was going to be the guy who had to say something to you?
Yeah.
Right. It had to be me.
Yeah.
And so I mean, Colin Powell said one time, if you're going to ever be a leader, you're going to piss off more people than you make happy.
Yeah.
And you have to do that, right? So I had to take that risk to be that way. The problem I had, even with myself, I didn't have the credibility to do it. Like, I had it when your dad was there because they knew I was sort of doing what he wanted. And I had that credibility and everything was built. But when he was gone, it wasn't like I had Teresa.
No.
You know, it wasn't like I was speaking on behalf of the ownership. It was like me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, they could blow it off pretty easily.
Yeah.
And then, probably the biggest event we had was when you and Michael came to my office one time and said, it was December. It was right the day of the Christmas party of 03.
Jeez.
Do you know this story?
No.
You guys came to my office and you're like, we were talking last night, and we haven't been paid since September.
Ugh.
You remember that now? He said, we haven't been paid since September, and you guys have breached my contract. And I'm like, whoa, time out. And they're like, how come you haven't paid me? And I'm like, well, I signed every operational check except for one account, and that account pays you guys. And that's Teresa. And you're like, well, I want to talk to her right now. And you were mad as hell. And I'm like, I don't know. And you're like, well, I'm going to go out and find out what I'm really worth. And you had just signed your deal. You had just signed an extension. And I'm like, just through 07 or something. I'm like, just calm down. We'll get this worked out. So let's call Teresa and get her down here. This is probably like 11 in the morning. So we call Teresa's office, call the house, and an hour goes by. And you're getting madder. And then they're like, and she's like, well, we're like, Judy, when's she coming down? Well, be 30 more minutes. And we waited another hour. So you were getting mad, so you left, and you and Michael and Richie Gilmore were there, and they came back. Well, then finally I said, listen, do not attack her. Do not make this personal when she shows up. This is a contractual issue.
Yeah.
This is business, right? So I went on my computer, and I typed up bullet points of things I wanted you to say, and say it this way, all right? Be ready, because when she comes in here, just, like, have a professional conversation. Yeah. We're like, all right, cool. She finally shows up. We waited 3 hours. She walks in, and Junior is so mad, he starts yelling at her. Been waiting down here for 3 damn hours, and he just starts jumping her case, and he's like, "You haven't paid me, and you breached my contract," and that's how the conversation started. And I was like, "Oh," and I'm trying to like mediate, but it was over, and it just became like it was bitter. And so this whole meeting left, and you said what you wanted to say, and you didn't want to stick around any longer. You had stayed long enough, and you left. And I was sat there, and Michael didn't say a word. And he and Richie left. And Teresa looked at me and said, "You ambushed me."
Mm.
And I'm
Oh,
like,
Lord.
Yeah. She goes, "You ambushed me." And I said, "Teresa, I did not." I said, I'm trying to resolve an issue. I don't have access to pay these guys." She was just like, she goes, "You care more about Dale Jr. than you care about me." And I said, "Caring about Dale Jr. is caring about you." And she made a comment. She goes, "Well, if Dale Jr. doesn't want to stick around here, we'll make another Dale Jr." And I was like, "Do you speak French? Who's we?" There's not another Dale Jr. Jeff Gordon can't do it. There's no one can do it. Like, we have to resolve this issue. And she was so mad at me that she didn't talk to me for another month until she said, "You can sign this paper or this paper. One is a termination, or one's a you can quit, and the other one is you can take a reduction." And it was all over.
A reduction?
Yeah, like a 67% reduction in
Are you
salary. Yeah, and she
67%?
67%. She was knocking me down to less than I made when I first started there. And she said, "You can sign one of these two." And I'm like, "This is over for this meeting we had with the drivers." And she was like, I've been hearing so much stuff lately. I just don't want to talk to you anymore. And I lost my cool. And it made it worse. And so anyway, that was the end. I said I'll be here until we load them up to go to the Daytona 500, and we load them up to the Daytona 500. It'll be my last day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was and it was all. She thought I ambushed her. And
I
couldn't help her.
Damn.
Hey, without that though, how long
Yeah.
do you think you would have lasted at DEI? Without that incident, I mean, it sounds like ever since 2001 at Daytona, like everything was. It's just trying to go in auto mode, but y'all could feel that the stability was going away. And then, did you see the end? Did you think the end for you was near?
I tell you what I felt like we could have been together a long time. And what gave me some hope was when in September that year of 03, Junior signed his contract. and I got called to Teresa's office by Teresa. And Junior was in there, and I think Kelly was in there.
Were we hollering, screaming?
No, you were signing your contract.
You're happy?
You were signing your contract, and Teresa said, Junior is signed this contract, and he said there's a few people around here that he want to make sure we're going to be here, and you're one of them. And I was like, I'm never going anywhere. You will have to drag me out of here, and they did. But I mean, you'll have to drag me out of here, and they didn't really. I walked myself out of there, but I was like, but I felt like it. But I was like, I'm not going anywhere, man. And I just my heart for that place was more than I had. I gave more to that place than I gave to my family. I didn't go to a lot of kid stuff. I wasn't home a lot. I was gone every weekend, and I was just like, that place meant everything. And sometimes the people say, listen, you got to honor the living more than the dead. And I was just honoring that, man. I was trying so hard that I think I wasn't old enough. I wasn't mature enough to handle what had been dropped on us. And I don't think any of us were. And
I certainly wasn't.
And so anyway, and then when all that went down, I was like, it'll be all right. We'll talk it out. And then everybody was like, all right, move on. So tough day.
Yeah.
We jumped right to the splintering into the bad stuff, and I'm curious because to help me put into context of how bad it was, and you guys going through this, we skipped all over the good stuff. When was it at its best? And I'm assuming it's pre-2001, of course. So is it 2000? Is it 99? When? And also, was Dale's vision?
Yeah.
When you talked about his vision when he first had a conversation with you, he's like, "We'll figure it out when we get there."
Yeah.
What was Dale's vision for the place? Did it get achieved? And was there any room in this vision for DEI to succeed well beyond his existence at it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I did worry about what he would be like as an owner not driving, because he liked to be involved in everything. And I was like, I don't want to call it meddling, but he definitely was involved in everything. So I was a little worried. I'm like, if he gets bored, boy, he's going to be hard on us. But as far as the best times, the sport was on this trajectory, and we were right at the front of that wave. And we were catching the Hendricks of the world, and we were catching the big teams of the era. And Roush was kicking ass every time you turned around at the time, and we were right there with them. And we were coming on their heels, and we were like, we are building something really special here. And the problem we had with it is we never realized it. We only realized it, like, looking back, is more so than when we were living it. And that happens probably to a lot of things in a lot of different times, but we didn't know how good we had it. And then I don't think our best years were leading up to it. I mean, we went to Daytona 500 for Steve Park in 1998, and we did not get an engine until after third round qualifying when we got Dave Marcus's RCR engine. We qualified with an engine that couldn't make 10 laps.
Wow.
And we couldn't even practice. And then we were qualifying in the back. We had to run third round qualifying with Dave Marcus's engine after he got done with it. I mean, that's how bad we were trying to get started. And so I would say, I mean, the golden years were really, I mean, 2001, 2002, really, 3. I mean, we were on the trajectory and doing really well, bringing on new partners, bringing on new sponsors, extending them. And honestly, I mean, I think we ran 11 speedway races and won 8 of them, finished first and second in 4 of them. Mm-hmm. And then we just kind of piled everything else around it. And you started winning at Richmond and started winning at Phoenix and we started getting competitive at other places. And so anyway, I don't know the golden era was before Dale's accident.
But that's when the root system was being put in. I mean, like, I think you guys were experiencing the ramifications of all the buildup from 99, 2000, 2001. He shows up as a rookie, sets the world on fire, got the big sponsor.
Yeah.
So you guys, it sounds like you were able to carry that out for several years.
We were, and I think what it actually probably created this sense of just, I don't know. We were probably a little too high on our horse. We probably thought it was too easy. We thought we had it all covered.
You thought you were invincible.
We were totally invincible, and so we were invincible on and off the track. So I mean, we'd go do stuff off the track that we wouldn't be proud of today. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't be proud of it today. And then I was, it's like, you're in town, Dale Earnhart Incorporated, you're the big cheese, you're the big news. And then we go to the racetrack and race like hell and be competitive, win races, and we'd be like, yeah, we're the guys. And it really, really, really fueled the egos across the board, whether it was the engine shop or the fab guys or me and everybody. So it just kind of, it sort of, our success started getting to our heads collectively to where everybody was smarter than everybody else. And it just ultimately created some problems.
Who was the leader then? Is it you?
Well,
or does everybody agree with
I
that?
remember talking to Mr. France, Bill Jr. Mike Helton asked me to come to his office, and I went to see him and Mr. France
When
one
was
day.
this?
This was in 03. And we went into his office, and Mike and I were talking about what's going on at DEI, what's going on with Teresa, what's happening at the place, and who's leading it. And I told him a few stories. And he goes, we got to go see Bill. So we go into Mr. France's office, and we're sitting there, and I had never been in his office before. And I sat there, and he starts asking me these questions. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. Oh, really? Really? Uh-huh. Yeah, that's great. And then he goes, well, I don't know why you're bitching about it. That's your job. And I'm like, oh. He goes, well, then that's you. It's not Teresa. That's not Steve. That's not somebody else. That's not Junior. That's you. So why don't you do your job? And I was like, yes, sir.
Damn.
I was, yes, sir. And so I tried to stop bitching and complaining and just do what I could do and try to be the leader. And that's when I'd go to those rooms, those competition meetings, and everybody was talking about all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, well, this is how we're going to do it. And they're like,
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
And so I just took it too far, I guess. But
I remember that. I remember
right.
when you came in, you completely had changed your approach.
Yeah.
And it was more like you're going to try to wheel it into existence, right?
Yeah.
You pound the desk.
I remember pounding the desk with the big old conference table one time. I remember pounding it. It's like, as long as I'm in this position, this is what's going to happen. And everybody's like, oh, it's probably not going to be long then.
My gosh. So when you left, where did you
go? So NASCAR was actually building that. Actually, when I left, I went to work for Bruton Smith.
Doing what?
Yeah. Doing what? I still don't know. And that's why I left. So Bruton we had grad dinner in Daytona, and we was talking to a couple different groups about, I was talking to Richard, I was talking to Chip Ganassi, I was talking to different people. And Bruton said, Marcus is going to take over this company. And he said, I really want him to know a lot more about what happens in the garage. I really want you to spend some time with him. I really want to work on some special projects. And I've got this licensing company over here that I can do some things with. And I'm thinking about some other businesses, and I'm thinking about all this stuff. And I'm thinking, he had all these ideas, and he goes, I want you to help me put all this stuff together. And then he told me, he said, I want you to learn our side of the business, because when Humpy Wheeler retires, I want you to think about that role. And I was like, oh my God, like Humpy's a legend. And I'm like, okay. And that was the conversation. And I went to work for them under that guidance, right? And I had a conversation with Humpy one day, and he was like, I'm gonna be here for 10 more years. And like, I don't know what anybody's talking about. Yeah. He's like, I'm never leaving. And then, I had a real struggle. I was trying to pull SMI presidents together. Trying to make them do, sort of aggregate their power. They didn't want to hear it. Sonoma doesn't want to hear about Texas, and Texas doesn't want to hear about Atlanta. And I was, so I was just, for weeks, months actually, I was just kind of, and so finally, and I'll tell you the deal. He gave me half my salary up front, and he said, I'll give you the other half at the end of the year. And I went to him and said, I want you to take your stock options back, and I want you to not ever pay me that dime. I didn't earn that money. I said, and one of these days I'll probably pay you back the money you paid me. And he was like, why? And I was just like, I didn't contribute. I don't feel like I did much. I feel like I was just spending my time. And then, Michael called me, and he was like, Toyota's coming, and I really want to be part of that. And he's like, do you want to come talk about that? And I did. And so I moved on down the road. I loved my interaction with Bruton. I think Marcus Smith is one of the nicest human beings ever born to this earth.
He is.
And I'd do anything in the world for that guy. And I really enjoyed my time around them to get to know him personally. I just never contributed professionally, I didn't think. Not like I was used to contribute.
So you end up, then you went right to Michael's?
Yeah, and I had about...
What year did you start working for Michael's?
05.
So, okay. Dang.
Yeah.
Are you looking over at DEI and watching what's going on there?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
We talked about that a lot, and I always try to tell people
because Michael's now out of DEI.
Yeah,
you're out of DEI.
Yeah, and in that first 06, we ended up doing a deal with Bill Davis because we transitioned Napa for a year until we got into the Toyota stuff, and I remember paying attention to your stuff a lot and watching a lot of these things go down. And if you remember, Paul Menard had started. And he brought a ton of money, and they didn't have points, and they were missing races, and we were all of us were missing races at the time, and I remember Max Siegel came over and John Story. And
Max was the CEO at DEI at the time.
Yeah, and he came over to DEI, and he's like, I'm gonna have all this autonomy, I'm gonna run this company, right? And he came up to me at Pocono, actually, a weird place, and he was like, you and I need to talk, and I was like, I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, and I said, man, but I'm not gonna say anything bad. I mean, I'll listen to what you got, what you're dealing with, but I'm not gonna say anything bad. I've said enough.
Yeah.
So we had a conversation. I listened to it, and then I tried to give him some advice against it. But he was telling me what was going on, and they ended up buying MB2 Motorsports.
That's right.
And they bought MB2 Motorsports to help get points for the 15 for Paul Menard, and then they didn't extend the Menards deal. They should have extended it 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
They didn't do it. And so you left in 06, at the end of 06, right?
At the end of
07, at the end of 07. And then Menards left, I think maybe the next year, and that was it. I mean, DEI was gone. And I had said it, when I was young, when Teresa and I got into our big fight in 04, I was like, if you don't change the way you are doing business right now, you will be out of business in 3 years.
Was Max Siegel and John
5,
Story?
Yeah. 4.5.
I mean, what was the hiring of Max and John her attempt at trying to change the business?
I think so. I mean, look, Teresa was trying everything she could. I'm not saying. I mean, she was trying to do everything she could. She didn't want that spot.
Yeah.
She didn't ask for that spot. She didn't ask to become the owner. Had to have all this responsibility. She didn't want to have people mad at her. She didn't want that. But it just came on her because this treadmill is going about 20 miles an hour, and if your little legs aren't going, man, you're gonna get spit right off the back, and like people just don't want to do that all the time. And so I was frustrated with her at the time, but if I took myself and put her in that spot, I mean, she never got asked to be in that role.
I understand that, and I've always felt that way too. That this was never her wish to be in this position and as the owner of that team. But she also didn't, like release the control and the power to someone that could run it.
Yeah. She did have a struggle with that, and
she didn't trust anybody.
But I'm gonna tell you why she didn't trust anybody. Because there were individuals in that company who spent a lot of time with Teresa at her house on vacations, telling her you can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
And she was influenced by that, and I would blame them just as much as anybody else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting.
So in the early years, I mean, like, you think that she changed. You don't think that this like territorialism or this trust issues was something that she was born with. This wasn't who she was. You think it's developed by getting quote unquote bad advice?
I didn't know her whole life, so I don't know if she ever had trust issues before. I just know the time that I spent with her, all those years, we would go down the boat, all those years building that company, she was the sweetest human being to me. And she was always great. And she was so gracious. And she knew I was a lieutenant. I wasn't trying to be a general. I was trying to be a lieutenant. I wanted to be the best lieutenant you ever saw in your life. And that's all I ever wanted to be. And I think she loved her role. Like, she would have her input and she could go do her thing and she'd have her input. And then I think that role overwhelmed her, in addition to losing her husband, in addition to trying to figure out life, in addition to trying to figure out kids, in addition to trying to figure out 300 people and keeping them fed. and all the foundation stuff that's been like all these things. And so I think her whole universe came down to Judy and Pat Laguerre.
Yeah.
You know, and those were her friends who she knew she could trust, and everybody else was sort of up in the air. And I think the whole circumstance sort of just led her that way. But I mean, she was incredibly nice to me for years.
One of the other things I think that was a big part of her every day was the autopsy photos.
Yeah, she had to go right into a fight.
Yeah, and that consumed a ton of her time in the, I don't know how many years after Dad died.
Yeah.
She was traveling regularly to be in the right rooms to try to fight that battle.
Yeah.
And that seemed pretty critical to her. I didn't realize at the time how important it was, but
Yeah.
she was, like you say, she had that going on. Dad's late, all of the things that just sort of fell into her lap, unracing related, dealership, all the businesses.
The boat, the house that hadn't been finished. The boat was almost
yeah.
finished, and people were like, "What are you going to do with the boat?" I don't know what I'm going to do with the boat. She had a lot of stuff going on, and when she needed more people, she made it less.
Oh.
And so I used to call her up and I'd say, "Hey, I need about 30 minutes with you today." And she'd like, "Well, I can't see today." And I'm like, "All right." Well, a couple of days go by. I'm like, "Hey, I need about an hour with you now." And then finally she'd come in there. And she'd fling the door open. She goes, "You got 10 minutes."
Yes.
And I'm like, I said, "Go find somebody else needs 10 minutes because I need about 2 hours now."
Yeah.
I was like, "You need to go find someone." She goes, "You're such a smart ass." And I'm like, "I'm just telling you, I can't even set up the story in 10 minutes to tell you to get a decision." So, it was tough on her, man. I look at it. It's everybody. And then the thing I'm most proud of, and I've said this to Dale Jr. 1,000 times, like when I first saw you on the couch all the way to when you started driving for us, to when I'm gonna tell you the story about when I had to wrestle you up out of bed to go accept Dale's most popular driver award.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll tell you that in a second. Yeah.
Everybody's got a story like that.
And to your racing career and the switch that went off when you went to Hendrick, and the switch that went off when you met Amy, like all those things, man. Every time I see you, I'm like, that guy is a role model.
Oh shoot!
I'm telling you, for becoming a man, because we've all had our days where we're sitting there running around and we think we're better than everybody else and we think we're smarter than everybody else. And certainly, I disrespectful to my own marriage, all these things that I was all those years. Like I didn't care. I was just out partying, having a good time. And then finally, you look back and you're like, man, there's a transition time in your life where you go like, this more important things are these things. And I've seen that in you, and it's like, and I'm not trying to just be blowing. I mean, like I grew up with you, and so like when you say I hope people change, I look back at my DEI days and I'm like, I wish I had seasoning.
Yeah,
I had the seasoning so you could go back in there and go handle situations differently instead of attacking, absorbing, you know. And those things are only learned with time and experience.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do it all over again because we could have done it. We could have done it better.
Yeah.
We could have made it last. But so what was that in New York City?
Yeah. So all right, a couple of New York City. This is so funny.
So
New York City was a bad town for you.
it wasn't. So there was a bar down there called
At the hotel?
No, in New York City in the meatpacking district.
Hogs and Heifers.
Yeah, Hogs and Heifers.
Yeah.
Schrader, and
all you had to say.
Petrie, and all them are like, "Hey, tonight's the night. Hogs and Heifers, we're going. You going? You going?" I'm like, "Sure, I'm going.
Yeah.
Jump in our cab. Here, I'm getting in your cab."
Yeah.
And they leave at 2:00 in the morning like they're supposed to, and I stay
Right.
until 6 or 7 in the morning. There, if I remember this correctly, there is the morning, that was when they had the
Myers
Brothers breakfast.
Right.
8:00 in the morning.
Right.
Painful.
Right. It's
Like
awful.
I literally haven't been back to the hotel but for an hour,
Yeah.
and he came up to get me.
So I'm at the breakfast, and I'm a little rough from the night before too, but I'm sitting there, and so all those years that we knew Dale Sr. should have won the most popular driver award, he didn't.
Yeah, Bill won.
Bill Elliott won it every year, and so Dale never won it, and so he gets it posthumously. So he gets it 2001.
Bill laid out of the vote.
That's right.
And
Forgot about that.
And so Dale wins the award. So they're like, we need Dale Jr. to accept it. And so there's a couple of things about this. Now, we rewind the clock to earlier in the year after Dale's accident, and I had sponsor after sponsor who were working with Dale come in and say, well, what are we going to do now? Oreo, Remington, not the Good Wrench guys, but the Burger King guys. And they're like, well, we need Dale Jr. And every time you turn around, Dale Jr. was having to carry what was just left by Dale. And so, and he's like, man, the only reason why you guys want me is because Dad's not here. The only reason why you want me. And like, it wasn't like, I'm not your guy. You're not my sponsor. It was like a fight. It's always like, and they were like, oh, well, you need to come do this interview to talk about your dad, and like all this shit, right? And Dale Jr. was like over it. Mm-hmm. So we get to New York. You got to go take this award, man. You need to accept this award for your dad. And he was just like, I'm not doing it. And so they're all for the breakfast, and they start the stuff. And I look at, I think it was Jade Gurse, and I'm like, or Steve Crisp, one of those two. And I'm like, hey, man, where's Junior? He's in the bed, and he says he's not coming down. And I was like, what? And I'm like, he has to. And I'm like, give me a key, because they had a key to your room.
Yeah.
So I go in there, I open up the door, everywhere. Junior had I don't know what, a bomb would have gone off, and he's sitting in bed, and we get into an argument. And I'm like, you got to go. Yeah. We got to go right now. He goes, I'm not doing it. And I'm not going to use your vernacular, but he's like, so he's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going. And he starts talking. Then he brings up all the stuff that he's had to do. And I'm like, I get it. And I said, your dad will only win this award one time. There's only one person in the world, in this earth, that can accept that award on his behalf. It's not me. It's not anybody else. It's you. And I said, you will live to regret it if you don't get up out of this bed and go downstairs and accept this award. And if you don't want to do it, that's up to you. And I just remember it clear as day. I said, that's up to you. Because I put it on you, and then I turned around and I walked out.
Yeah.
And about 20 minutes later, here comes bloodshot eyes, a suit, unshaven, which doesn't mean anything now because he's got a beard. But he's unshaven, and he's like wrecked. And he comes up, and I'm like, we're like tapping, going, yeah, he's here, because they pushed the award till late. And he goes up there, and he had one of the most eloquent speeches. I swear to God, it was awesome. And it was awesome. He spoke for like 3 minutes about the award. He came off the stage. He went upstairs, and I swear in the elevator you could see the jacket coming off and the clothes coming off, because he got to his room and he was out. He was out to the banquet.
That speech written by Hog and Heifer.
Oh my God.
Well,
oh my God.
Yeah, I remember being. That was an argument.
Yeah.
Hey, so hold up, because I know there's so many things I want to ask you, Ty, and they're all over the place. So we're out of order at this point. Can I just go back and ask, because we do need to tackle a couple other maybe MWR moments.
All right, let's do it.
But before
I told
we
you
go
nothing was off limits. I think I know where you're going.
No. Before that, I want to go back to the 2001 Daytona 500 before the accident.
Yeah.
Dale Jr., like you were in I don't think people really appreciate the situation you would have been in as Dale Jr. spotter, but also as a lieutenant at DEI with Michael Waltrip having just arrived.
Yeah.
And now you're on the last lap. Michael, who's never won, Dale Jr., who's in second, who you're his spotter. Do you recall, before all the turmoil happened, what's going on in your head, and how was Dale Jr. going to pass Michael for the win?
Yeah, I know it's historically accurate that we had a lot of meetings about how this is going to go down, and Dale did talk a lot about us drafting together and getting to the end. I never anticipated that he wouldn't make a move. I didn't think Dale. Even though Junior was right there and we were coming down a couple laps ago, I still thought Dale would make a move, and because that's him, right? So I'm really watching that, because just like Junior says, man, I saw in your interviews, I don't want to make a mistake. Dad's right there watching me, and I'm like, I don't want to make a mistake as a spotter and like block, and then next thing you know, we're all crashing, and he's like, what the hell? So like, I'm nervous just like he is about making the wrong move because of who was behind us, but I was expecting a move, and when I saw this hornet's nest coming, I knew it was going to be down to just the two of us, and as a spotter, all you can do is feed the information, tell him what's going on, who's got the runs, or whatever kind of stuff, or where, high, low, whatever. And I'm going to say this, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it out loud. When they started getting loose and spinning, it took the pressure off immediately to have to make a decision about Dale. And I was like, oh, we're going to win. We're going to finish first and second. So for me as a spotter, I wanted to win, but the story about Michael was big, right? So like I was like, oh, man, that sucks. But for that one split second, it's like we didn't have to make a decision to block Dale. And then the race is over, and as everybody sees it, I mean, you're like, he's going to be mad, but you walk away from that. And but I was all I could remember saying and thinking was like, Dale's going to be so happy. And I just couldn't wait for that moment, and which of course never came. But I was nervous for Junior. I was nervous for the company, but I was really nervous to not make the mistake that Dale Junior always talks about. I don't want to make a mistake when Dale's got to run. And he's got people shoving him, and what do you do?
Right.
So,
like the example of 2000 Talladega when, Skinner's
I mean,
up there leading.
Skinner's leading, Junior second, and Dale's coming. We told him he was coming, but he wouldn't move to block him. I'm like, here he comes to get to the top, move, and he was like, I'm good. I'm good. Y'all go. You go on.
Oh, thank you for answering that. I've always wanted to know that about that. Your approach to that. Now, MWR. Obviously, the big conspiracy. What do you call that? When you think about the situation at Richmond,
which one?
the Richmond and the team orders and stuff that ultimately led to your suspension.
Yeah,
I'm curious ultimately to know if you felt like the suspension was just and fair. But what I want to know is your perspective, your vantage point leading up to it.
So I'm actually glad you brought that up. I've avoided talking about it too much, but there were 3 or 4 things going on at the same time that seemed connected, that were not connected. And if they were connected, it would have been a lot cleaner. And so I would say the same thing I said to Mike Helton and those guys when I sat down on the meeting. They were like, tell me what happened at Richmond. I'm like, which part? Because you're going to have to talk to each different group, because if you listen to the radio and you watch what happened, it wasn't like we all had all this planned out. So I'll tell you exactly what I did. What I did was, knowing the situation going into the race, watching the points and seeing how everybody was maneuvering around. And I saw things that were going on with one particular company that I thought was really weird. And I mean, I thought there was one driver in the Hendrick group that was acting like he was blown up all day and getting out of the gas at start-finish line. I'm like, that's weird. And then you start watching all this stuff, and then you see who's up there in the spotter stand and tapping on this guy, and you see, there's all the majors are all sitting up there, and like they're trying to like work out, maneuver everything, and you see it. It's all year long. And so I'm sitting there, and caution came out with however many laps to go, and I'm spotting for Brian Vickers. Now I've got Channel 2, NASCAR, MRN, Channel 1, and a digital radio. I'm listening I got all these voices in my head, and so everybody's like, oh, you were on the 15. I couldn't get to it if I wanted to. So I'm sitting there. Here's what happened. Caution comes out. We're sitting there. Leaders come down pit road. There's like 6-7 laps to go, and I'm like, we're a lap down, and we take the wave around with Brian Vickers. So right when they're coming to get ready to come around the corner, we take the wave around with Brian. And I see Logano is in front of us. And then as soon as I see him coming around, I look up at the scoreboard, and it says Jeff Gordon in by 1 point, Logano out by 1 point. And I'm like, well, Logano had 2 wins, and if his 2 wins drops to 11th, he makes the playoffs, and Truex gets knocked out. So I'm like, it's a 1 point difference. And I'm like, well, how is the 22 in front of us but behind us on the rundown? And it all happened while we were waving around. And I looked at the scoreboard, and I saw what was going on. I'm like, oh, shit, he was 2 laps down coming to 1 down. Logano was, and we were 2 to 1. I'm like, we need to get that lap back. And so I'm like, because I don't know who he's racing. I don't have time to go, oh, I wonder who he's racing this lap. I didn't have time. So we were coming around going into turn 1 to catch the back of the field. I'm like, Brian, I need you to pit. He's like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, I need you to pit. I need you to pit right now. And he was like, I don't understand. Well, by this time, the leaders now are going in turn 3. You know how the green drops in the middle of 3 and 4. And I'm like, green flag, but I need you to pit. And he's like, I don't understand. Do I have a tire going on? What's going on? And I was just like, I need you to pit right now for a point. And when I said that, it was like the SWAT team was pointed. All the red lasers were on my throat, my heart, my brain, and it was brain matter everywhere.
Yeah.
And so he was like, oh, okay. So then he comes down, and it's just it's a mess. Mm-hmm. And so after the race, I'm like, and so I was like, holy shit, we pulled it off. And then I got approached by another owner who came over and said, hey, that just worked, didn't it? Worked really well, didn't it? And I looked at him and I'm like, what are you talking about? And I later found out what they were doing. And I'm like, all this was going on up there, all maneuvering around that same frickin' point. And I knew that I had said it on the radio. And I knew that was bad news. So I hated that not everybody got in trouble.
Yeah, just y'all.
But I got slaughtered. I got filleted. Yeah. I watched television. And I'm like, I'm the only guy in the world who's ever done. I'm like, I was pissed. But Michael and Rob came to me and they were like, shut up. Just shut up. You just let it go. And it was hard for me because there was a lot, and it was personal attacks, and it was professional attacks and personal attacks. And I'm watching Ryan McGee going, Marty Smith sitting there like, Ty Norris never work in this garage again. He'll never be around this garage again. And I'm like, you have no freaking idea what all was going on. And I thought when some of the other tapes came out, I'm like, see, everybody's going to get in trouble. I was the only one. So I'm going to tell you this. I applauded, as mad as I was and as still mad as I am about it, for a company. NASCAR had to do something. It was out of control. And I watched people during the season pay with tires for a guy to come off the racetrack because their guy had trouble. Go pit. Now I'm gonna give you tires. And like there was so much conversation going on about what they could do for each other. It had to end. And I as mad as I was that I was the poster boy for it, it had to end.
I was more mad that they gave Jeff the spot. Like they literally
made a spot
for a guy in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I was like, what in the hell are we doing? This is like not the way to clean this up. It's like making this whole problem worse.
Yeah, it definitely like they didn't know what to do, right? And so I knew they were going to come down hard on me. And I knew that others weren't going to come down as hard on them because they need drivers, right? They need teams. They don't really necessarily need guys like me. And so I have never felt the cold shoulder of the entire industry like I did. And I never wanted to walk in that garage again. I never wanted to be around again. I got really bitter. And I'm like, I'll go work in another sport. I'll go dig a ditch. I'll go be a sports writer. I don't give a what I do, but I'm never doing. And because I wanted to come out and just back to my point. They were mean to me. I'm gonna be meaner to you. You bet you got me. I'll wait till what I come out with. And I finally got myself zenned out, and I just said,
"Have you? Because
treat this with respect.
Yeah,
treat it with respect. I made a mistake. Stand up. I said it out loud. Take it in the jaw and keep on moving. And there are a lot of people at NASCAR, including Jim France, who pulled me off to the side at the banquet, and he said, "Son, you're gonna be okay. Just move on past it." And if I didn't have conversations like that, I probably would. I don't know that I'd been back.
What did you do after that?
So I stayed at MWR. I stayed there, and then I just I did all we could do to put our teams. Hell, we ended up extending contracts with 5 Hour. We extended contracts with Aaron's. We ended up re-signing drivers. I mean, we were settling ourselves back in. The snow globe was finally settled again, and we lost Truex and we lost Napa. And I always tell Chase Elliott and Bill Elliott, and I see them like, I had a little something to do with you guys getting nappy. You know that, right? And but now it's just like I feel. And we started getting our footing under us again, and then Brian, unfortunately got blood clots, and he started getting blood clots, and Boyer was a lot left on Boyer, and Boyer was having a tough time being the lead dog on the sled. He was a phenomenal teammate, phenomenal guy, and but like he was the only guy left, and it put him in a bad spot, and everything just kind of started falling apart from there.
So what happened? When did that deal just ends up imploding on itself?
Yeah, I mean Rob Kaufman ended up leaving, taking his investment and taking it over to Ganassi, and he ended up being over there because he loves sports cars and IndyCar and things of that nature. So it actually ended up being a better place for him to invest anyway. And so I got recruited to go over to become the president of Spire Motorsports, and I was over at Spire
immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I left MWR. I took December off and started January 1st with Spire as the president of Spire, and I was there all the way through 19. Started my own business, and that's when Justin called me.
What business did you start?
So I started a business because I was down on NASCAR. Really, I thought it was hard to find sponsorships, and just the way the industry was going, it was hard to justify the ask anymore. And I was starting to get exposed a lot more to some other sports and the music, and so we had just done a big music program with Dierks Bentley, and started getting involved with the Red Light Management Group over there. And so I started my own business, and the first client I got was Red Light Management and Dirks' team, and so I went to and I started doing that. And then I was doing consulting work for Aquarius and Mark Bluestein and the guys out of Baltimore, Maryland. And so I was fine. And then I had a lot of great business to do, and I was like, music is the spot. Music is like racing was in the 80s. I mean, great extensions of everything, great marketers or marketing platforms, but not great sponsorship built out, like how we do it. So I was going down that path, and then that's when Justin called. Actually, TJ Pusher from Spire called me, and he says, Justin Marks is looking for you, and let's have a conversation. And I ended up having that conversation in summer of 19, and I've been with Justin ever since. What
about your business?
I shut it down because I couldn't do music and this at the same time.
You sell it or shut it down?
No, I mean, it was you're looking at the business, right? The business is up here and putting all these programs together, and we basically, I bowed out of the Aquarius thing in the summer, right when Justin came about, because I couldn't spend time up in Baltimore, and then the January of 20 is when I told the Red Light guys, I can't be chasing Jake on the Lake Tour sponsorships and and Luke Bryan Farm Tour sponsorships and Lady A's tour. I can't do that when I'm trying to build this business over here. And so, but when Justin said let's move to Nashville, I'm like, I love it, because now a lot of those relationships that I had built that time there was like, man, it just makes it pretty natural to be here. So, yeah, so it's all good.
If you want to start up a race team, call Ty. Apparently that's his legacy.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because you've seen them succeed, and you've seen why they fail. Like, you have this sort of, we better not do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there before. Let's not try. That's a bad step.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. What do you think would have saved DEI?
Your ownership of it. And I'm not saying just because you're here, but that's been the only thing that would have saved it.
You think I was in position to manage that?
No, but I think you'd brought people in and let them do their jobs. Yeah. That's all it needed. That's all it needed. And, I still think you would have been able to bring the right people in. And honestly, if I wasn't the right guy, you would have made that decision, right? But I think that it needed another Earnhardt presence. And with Teresa still being there, if y'all could have worked it out, I think DEI would have still existed. It's not unlike, and you may remember this way or you don't, but you and Teresa were already having some issues, and I came to you because we had an opportunity with Bass Pro, and I'm like, you guys should start a Bush team.
Yeah, chance to.
Yeah, and so we started talking about it, and Fred Wagonalls was on board, and Fred said, I'll sponsor your first race, and we had some royalty money that was going to seed it, and we were like, all right, so we started Chance 2 Racing, and that created this partnership with you and Teresa to figure out how you're going to own teams together, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought that was one of the better things that we ever did, because what I was hoping for you, and this is very much a personal thing, I was hoping you would start to see a little bit more about what it takes to run with these things.
Yeah.
And see why some of this stuff happened, right? Because I'm like, you're just really going to open your eyes to that side. And so I thought Chance 2 was a great opportunity to lead into what ultimately should be done, which was, you taking over. And but, I think Chance 2 did really great things. We ended up I'm saying it's probably seeded, JR Motorsports, and look what you guys have done. I mean, you got to be super proud of what you're doing here, but DEI could have been that way.
Yeah, I don't think we ever had any problems together with Chance 2, me and Teresa. Most of our stuff was driver owner.
Yeah.
How much did y'all interact though?
None. I mean, we Chance 2, we had this little shop that it ran out of. And, I mean, it grew into something a little bit bigger than that when they went full-time racing with Truex. But it was a race team that it was a race team that ran itself by the people that ran it, not me. I wasn't hands-on with it. Very much like what we have here. Like,
yeah,
Kelly's the smarter one of the two of us. I let her run that part. We got Pemberton and LW and all the other people, down the ladder that know what they're doing and can be here every single day, and that's the way that team ran. And Teresa and I never had to disagree or agree on anything. Everything seemed to come pretty easy with that relationship and Chance 2.
Yeah, it did.
That's the way I remember it.
Yeah, it did, and I remember exactly the same. And it was very well funded. We were able to get good funding right out of the bat, and unfortunately, that was one of those situations when I left in 2004, I didn't get to see it through. You got Truex on full time, didn't get to see it through, but no, I was real proud of it. I was like, we helped start it, but what the people in our roles now, or people in my role with Justin Marks is you respect your employees, because that if you hired people to do their jobs, let them do their jobs, and provide them with all the resources you can to make them successful. And that's the only thing you can do. You don't have to, I was so busy micromanaging at DEI. I was signing checks. I was doing the flight itineraries. I was handling the sponsorships. Every employee at DEI had their employment review done through my office. 300 people. And I don't know what the guy,
sure,
the cylinder head guy's doing. I can't be that guy. But I had all that. I took all that control. I wanted all that just to make sure everybody could hear it, right? And it's like, it just, as you grow, you definitely have to delegate, and you have to trust those people, and help resource them.
Your answer to Dale's question is interesting, because if it would have required Dale Jr. to take over the company, which would have required Dale Jr. and Teresa to have worked together, I can't help but wonder, could that have been possible? And I don't like talking hypotheticals, but could that have been possible had Teresa and Dale Jr. not had to have the friction over working out driver contracts and rights to ownership of your name and your likeness and that kind of thing? If you would have removed the driver element of it, do you think that there could have been a pathway of ownership at DEI?
If the respect were there both ways.
But it wasn't.
I think it went much deeper than driver and owner. And I think but I saw Junior growing up. I'm not sure she ever saw him growing up. And look, I mean, comparing where you were in your life at that time and where Dale was running the company, he can't do that. Well, we should have given it a chance. That to me seemed more like a personal issue that was coming out in these professional ways, and if it wasn't for that, then maybe. But I think they had some other things they had to work through, and you had to. And I tried to tell Teresa one time. I said, please stop looking at Junior like the guy who spilled, grape juice on your white carpet, as a kid. Like, please stop doing that. Like, he's a professional race car driver. In fact, he's probably one of the most sought after race car drivers in the business. And we have to treat him that way. We have to treat his contract that way. We can't treat him like, like he's the kid. You got to treat him like the man.
I think that I was raised in a lot of hell, partying a lot. And I probably am like, I was probably as hard to find sometimes as she was. And, as long as we were racing good, I thought I could do anything I wanted. The rest of the time was mine to do anything I wanted to do with it. In 04, 05, I was absolutely not in position to run the team or take over such a heavy responsibility. But I believe by the time I was ready to leave, if she would have called my bluff on the 51% ownership that I put out there in the media day at Daytona, I could have quickly grown into that person. Because I feel like when I went to Hendrick, there was a transition for me in maturity and so forth. And I would have grown into that person to be able to, to keep DEI going. And we would have figured it out, with Kelly's help and everybody else involved. We would have tried to figure it out. It would, we've done it here, and I think we would have stumbled, and it would have been some rough times. But
the foundation was laid.
The foundation was there, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I got a call from Tim Schuler from Budweiser one day, and Steve Uline, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on over at Junior's house?" And I said, "What do you mean?" Well, the local bottler or distributor just said the most beer I deliver to any retailer in the entire state of North Carolina is in Mooresville at Dale Jr.'s house. And I was like, they said, is he selling it? And they're like, no, they're drinking it. He goes, how the hell is he drinking so much beer? Like, we're delivering case after case after case. And like, there's not a store in the area, the region, that's consuming as much beer.
I had a lot of help drinking it.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, well, I guess he's having a good time. Let him go. But I love those guys. I miss. I saw Steve Uline in January. I went and skied at his place out in Steamboat.
Do you remember Did you come to the New Year's party that I had in the backyard in that big shop I built, the brick shop? Remember that shop I built behind the house across the street?
Yes.
We had the New Year's party there?
No, I didn't, but I do have a story about that. Keep going.
Yeah.
I didn't go.
I was just wondering if that was, we must have drank 150 cases.
I'm going to tell you a story about that particular party. You were proud of that party.
Yeah.
You were sending out invites and everything.
Yep.
And so he came to my office and he goes, and I'm not going to name the guy. He comes and he goes, I don't want that guy to be on my team anymore. I want you to move him or fire him or whatever. I don't want you to be on my team anymore. And I'm like, he's one of our best fabricators. Why? And he goes, well, I've got this party going on. I'm sending out invitations. And he goes, and I don't want to invite him. And if I don't want to drink beer with him, I don't want him working on my damn race car.
Oh, my gosh.
And I was like, Junior, I appreciate where you're coming from, but I can't fire the guy over that. He goes, move him off my team. And he's like, I won't be around people I want to be around. And then he starts yelling at me. He's like, why aren't you coming? And I was like, well, because I have a family, and there's 1 week out of the year. It's between Christmas and New Year's that I take off and go with them. And every 51 other weeks, I'm doing this. And he goes, all right. And I was like, don't fire me because I didn't want to go to your party.
Oh, my God.
You didn't fire him, but the guy probably didn't last, did he?
No, he lasted to the end. He lasted to the end.
Oh, you remember who it is?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do.
I don't.
He lasted to the end. He lasted to the end.
Yeah.
He was strange. I will give him that.
There was some strange
I'm
ones.
not just pulling this stuff out of my ass. He was a strange guy.
He was strange.
Junior doesn't party with strange guys.
I know. I got in trouble with your dad coming over to your house after you had a big binger. And so Phil Murdoch had called me about doing
Remington guy.
Yeah, and he was doing a endorsement deal with which one was it? One of the ATV companies. So your dad had Articat, right?
Yep.
And this is Polaris. So he's like, Polaris, We're going to do an endorsement with Junior. We're give him this much money. We're going to give this many 4 pieces of equipment. So ATVs, wave runners, whatever you want. So I was like, he goes, I need an answer though. So I'm like, to go over there. So I drive over to your house and I knock on the door and people start like coming out of like blankets on the floor and off the couch. There's 2 guys sleeping like long ways like that on the couch. And I was like, what in the hell? And so Junior's in there in the bedroom asleep. And I'm like, hey man, I'm sorry, but I really I got to get an answer to this guy. So I'm like, this is what they'll do. This is how much money is how many ATVs. And he's like, hell yeah, I'll do that. And so by the time I see Dale's truck pull up, Dale comes in the house and he goes, what's going on in here? And he goes, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm talking to him about this player steal. He goes, what player steal? And I was like, well, let's explain it to him. And he's like, go to my office. Okay. So I get in my car, go across the office, go upstairs, and I wait for him. I go to his office, wait for him. He comes back over there. He's mad as hell. So Jeff Blauser, I think it was Jeff Blauser's buddy.
Pitcher?
One of the guys.
Yeah, pitcher
anyway,
for the Braves.
Oh, yeah,
had somebody
not a
give,
pitcher,
somebody,
he's a shortstop.
shortstop or something. He'd
Yeah.
given him a bat, an Atlanta Braves bat. And so Dale walks in and grabs this bat, and he's pacing back and forth and hitting his boots. And he's hitting his boots, and he's like, I got a damn Articat deal. You don't ever go to Dale Jr. with something that's in conflict with me. And he's like, you don't talk to him about anything until you talk to me first. And he was mad,
God.
slamming that bat. And he goes, don't you ever do that again.
I remember that.
And he puts the bat down. He says, now you want to go to lunch? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, man, I'm sorry. I'll never do it again. And I don't think he ever did the player steal.
Damn.
He didn't never do it. And then he was mad because he's like, I'm going to say I'm 7-time champion. How's he getting more pieces than me?
He come over there. I remember one time, I thought he was going to be mad about the after party.
Yeah. The people,
Aftermath.
the people, the way they were
Yeah.
sleeping.
He came over there one time after I wrecked the car at Charlotte.
I was going to tell you that story
driving the
too.
Wrangler car.
Yeah.
So I'm driving the Wrangler car in 1997 in Charlotte, and we're fast. We're like 8th on the board. We're going to tape it off and qualify, go make a mock run in practice. We didn't know that we should probably put tires on too, so we had these 30-lap tires on and taped it off. Like a recipe for disaster. And sure enough, through 3 and 4, I'm coming through the corner, and it come around, and I bounced into the fence. And we loaded up, and I think my career's over.
Yeah.
And I had a friend with me named Punchy and another guy. And we rode over to my house and grabbed a bottle of vodka and put it on this coffee table in front of me. And I got my cigarettes. I'm smoking. I got a big old pile. I got an ashtray full of cigarettes. Punchy and the other guy, God, I can't remember.
It wasn't Terrell, was it?
I don't think it was.
Yeah.
Are sitting on the couch across from me is a love seat. And we got our shoes kicked off and we're sitting there, and we're not talking, not jovial at all. And I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. This sucks. I can't believe it. I'm not going to run the race, and I'm wrecked a car, only car I got. I didn't know it, but they had brought the car over to the shop, and we're working on it.
Yep.
The guys that were helping me, now I'm 50 yards away from them, or just across the street. They're at the shop cutting the car apart to get it fixed.
And you don't know that.
No.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah.
And so the door swings open. And it's a double-wide trailer I lived in. And the door swings open, bam, slams against the washer and dryer.
Yeah.
Clunk, 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 boom, doom,
Boots.
doom. Dad comes walking in. He looks over at my buddies and goes, get your shoes on and get off my property.
Yeah.
And they grabbed their shoes and took off out the front door and drive down the road. And Dad looks down at me and goes, what in the hell are you doing? They're over there working on your car right now, fixing it, cutting the frame. I'm like, I didn't know they were there. I didn't know they were doing that.
Yeah.
They're fixing it? Yes, they're cutting it apart. I'm like, you're gonna fix it? He's like, yes, we're gonna fix it. I'm like, not for the race that weekend, but like I just thought I was done.
So
we went outside.
We went outside on the front porch.
Yeah.
We're on the deck because I was with them.
You were with Dale.
Yeah, I went over there with Dale.
Yeah.
And so
what was he saying when he's driving up the driveway?
He was just mad.
Right.
At first, I think he was just going to check on you.
Oh.
And then he was mad as hell because you were drinking, hanging out with your buddies, and the guys over there, working. So it pissed him off, and then he went spike pissed. Like we come through, we sit out in the front porch, and this is something I don't know if I should share, but I'm gonna share it anyway. He starts yelling at him about getting together, about getting his life together, figure out what you're gonna do. I'm trying to do all this stuff for you. And Junior is the first time I saw him do this, and he looked at him. He says, "Dad." He didn't call him Dad. He looked at him. He said, and I'm gonna use your vernacular. He goes, "I ain't been a pimple in your ass for the last 10 years, and all of a sudden you can come over here and start telling me all this stuff." And all of a sudden, like, it meant something. And Dale's face changed. Now, I don't know if you remember saying that or not, but his face changed, and I was like, that was one of those. I've had moments like that with my own son. And I finally told him one time, I was yelling at him one time in his room, and he looked at me, and I stopped and I said, "You're right." And he goes, "What?" He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to do because I was always yelling at him. He was like, I didn't know what to do. And I saw Dale's face change, and I was like, this is a father-son moment, and I walked away. And I went out and stood out in the truck and let them talk for a little bit longer and finish up.
Yeah.
Because you stood up to him.
Yeah. It was the greatest conversation we ever had.
Yeah.
And it was the first conversation, like first real talk we had. And he went from, "You're f***ing up, you're making all, you got to get your ass in gear," to like explaining to me, not like, not like.
He told you he was building it for you.
Yeah. He was like,
it was
"Hey,
the first time he told you that.
Yeah. It's the first time he really let me understand, like this is for you, man. This is happening. All this is for you. This is, and we, we had a breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm glad I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you said. I haven't been a pimple in your ass, and all of a sudden now, and I was like, oh,
I'm sweating just thinking about it.
I'm like, God. All right, I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna hang out by the truck.
Yeah.
Wow. It was. I've had. I look back at my life and I've seen some remarkable things, and you learn from those, and those moments like there. I'm glad you remembered a lot of them because honestly, I'm gonna say this again out loud. There are so many people who walk around talking about Dale Earnhardt stories. Like, they did this and they did that and they did this, and like half times you're like, that's not even the right year.
Yeah. Like
that, you guys weren't even the same. He would never do that. And so it's neat to be able to sit down like this and talk about those moments because they were impactful for you and impactful for him, but impactful for me as well as part of my whole growth. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I'm glad we could talk about it.
Yeah, I love being able to talk about Dad and share the true stories about him. We both loved him. And we both think the world of him. But damn, he was a human, and he failed and he made mistakes and he wasn't perfect. Yeah. And I like when we talk about that part of him where you get to see him fail and be real, and be human. I was riding down the road on the way to Darlington this weekend with my Nova to drive it, mm-hmm. and had my uncle Robert G. Jr. with me, and he spent a ton of time with my dad in the 70s going to the dirt tracks. Mm-hmm. And then when he tells a story about Dale Earnhardt, he holds Dad on this pedestal. Mm-hmm. We went here and Dale did this, and Dale did this, and Dale did this. And every story that most of the stories you're going to hear from Robert G. Jr., Dad's going to be wearing a crown, right?
Right.
And Robert G. Jr. has a brother, Jimmy, that was there mm-hmm. during all those same times. But if you have Jimmy separate to tell the same story, he tells a more realistic version of the story. Like he'll say, Dad would go to a junkyard to get a $3 part, and go and pay the guy $3 to go back there and get his part, and then he'd eyeball all the other cars and around there and all the other things he needed, and break into that junkyard in the middle of the night and steal all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and Robert G. Jr. would never tell that story, right?
Yeah.
And so I like, you know, we've been talking about how insane, amazing he is all these years, and sometimes it's fun to talk about how real he was.
And
he was an imperfect father, and you know, but he got things right too, right? He got it wrong, and then he turned it around and got it right, and been able to, you know, that was 97 when that conversation happened.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And you know how 98, 99, and 2000 went with me and him.
Yeah.
I mean, we were getting closer and closer and closer, and the conversations we were having were less, you need to do it this way, more and more like, we're going to do this together.
We're building something.
We're going to do this together. You did it, you know.
Yeah, I so there's a couple of things. Remember when you used to have a basketball goal out there, and then somebody tore their leg up or tore an Achilles or something? And Dale was like, no basketball. And I told Dale, I'm like, basketball is my life, man. Like, I play basketball every day. I go to the hood and play because I love it. And he was like, nope, can't play. So I came back from a race on the Xfinity, like it's Bush race, whatever, and I wasn't going to be there for the Cup race. And I tore my ACL playing basketball at the YMCA. So he gets home from the race that night, and he calls me. He's like, what time are you going to come to the shop tomorrow? And I was like, I'll be there early, but I say, let you know. I tore my knee up pretty bad. He goes, doing what? And I said, playing basketball. And he goes, I'll see you tomorrow. And he slams the phone down. And he's so pissed. So the next day I go over there, and we're building DEI. It's like Nathan's building it out. They're out there looking at plans and stuff. And so he's coming out of this shell of a building, and I'm over in the deer head shop. And I walk over, and I'm limping and stuff. And he could see which leg I was limping on. And he had to go to an appearance, so he's got like his Chase shirt on, his blue Chase shirt and his jeans and his boots. And he gets there close and puts his hand out for me. And right when I go to shake his hand, he picks up his leg and he kicked me right in the knee as hard as he could, right in my knee. And took me down. And he goes, I told you to never play basketball. Now I'm not going to have my employees where they can't be around. And I'm teared up. It freaking hurt. So this was like on a Monday. So later in the week, the girl, Becky, used to come around, like work on his back and stuff because his neck was all messed up. She's like, she checked, she goes, you tore your ACL. And I'm like, I know, but I can't like take a minute off to go to the doctor. And I'm at Rockingham limping around. And she goes and tells Dale sends Jimbo over, and I go over and see him. And he's like, to go home right now, go see Dr. Serene. He's going to fix you up. I've already talked to him. Like, he felt bad. So you're talking about an imperfect person. Yeah. He couldn't control it. Like, and I'm like, dude, like, you have a torn ACL. And instead of being on the pedestal, he took me out. Yeah. And I was like, dude, that's not cool. That was really not cool.
Not cool.
And but he had, he was influential in everybody's lives, but there are a lot of days where I just was like, get this man out of this office. Get this man on the back of that farm.
Get him on a bulldozer.
Get him on a bulldozer. Get him in a happy place because he is a miserable son.
Yeah.
And
God, he would come through there so hot.
I couldn't stand it. And then Uncle Randy would come in. He goes, what's going on? I'm like, you don't even want to know. Like, I just was, yeah, you're right. Everybody, I love the fact that people speak so highly, but at the same time, the flaws are what make it, right? Mm-hmm. And we've all done it. We've all lived it. And better for it.
What was the best thing? The best thing about DEI, in my opinion, was the kitchen. Mm. You remember the name of the cook, Chef David?
Yeah.
His name?
Yeah, maybe, because we had two.
Yeah.
Chef David.
The younger fella used to cook this stir fry with chicken. It was like kind of like a Asian sort of flavor to it.
Yeah.
Freaking amazing, guy. So, I could walk up. This was like the best perk in the world, man. I live right across the street. I could get in, got up out of bed at noon. I could go over and be like, Chef David, man, mix me up some of that chicken. Yeah.
So we had this trophy room, and Dale was like, I'm going to make this restaurant because I want people to have to drive into town. So he's like, we're going to feed them.
It's insane.
I was like, all right, well, that's cool. And it was $5.
Idea. Yes, $5.
And he's like, $5, and they had like unbelievable spread out there, like you couldn't get
meal
for
had to cost $20. Yeah, the meal had to cost $15, $20 to make.
No way they were making it, right?
Employees had a card.
Right.
You could swipe your card, and it charged you $5 off of your off of your. I mean, I know this makes sense to you now, but imagine this in 1999, 2000.
It was ahead of time.
Way ahead of its time.
So,
Everybody loved it.
And then Dale said he was going to buy that field across the street, and he said, I'm gonna build houses in here, and I'm gonna build these houses because and only employees can buy these houses, and they'll buy them from me. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So they work here. You want them to live there, and they're going to eat here. I'm like, we call it Daleville. Like it's not. No one's going anywhere. And so, but that was awesome. But one of my favorite meals I ever had up there was AJ Foyt came over.
Damn.
And he was looking at buying all of our Busch stuff because we were going cup racing in 2001. So AJ Foyt came over and sat down, and AJ and your dad and I sat there at lunch for 2 hours, maybe more, talking about life and racing and cars and inventory and how much we're going to sell stuff for. And I was like, how this little kid who is like the pit reporter at 19 couldn't go to the college I wanted to go to, sitting here with these two legends, man. It was awesome. That was my favorite trophy room moment.
Yeah.
I can't imagine there being one better than that.
Yeah.
AJ Foyt and Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, they were a couple of hard heads. They were fun to listen to them. They were too busy stroking each other about how, you're great. Nah, you're great. Nah, you're great. And I'm like, hey, come on, man, fight about something.
Everybody's great. Well, man, we're gonna have to cut it off. It's been a fun conversation. Yeah, damn. Just so much so many things that I had forgotten that you remember. I've always kind of admired that about people that can remember all the details about a conversation or a meeting and the feeling and temperature in the room and all that.
Yeah.
And you brought back a lot of cool memories.
Yeah. That's
and
great.
It was good. It was I hoped it would be like this.
Yeah. It's been therapy for me too.
Yeah.
I need to get some stuff off. It's not therapy as much as quite often I hate people who only can live in the past and can't live in the future.
Yeah.
They only live there. And it's a great place to visit. Mm-hmm. It's a great place to think about. But, man, I love what you're doing right now. I couldn't be happier with what I'm doing professionally and personally right now. And so I'm finally somebody I can look in the mirror and be proud of. And it takes a while to get there. And so it's all good, man.
Well, man, you've always been a great friend to me. You've always had, all the ups and downs that I've been through, that you've been through personally. Anytime I've ever had a text from you or a conversation with you, you've supported me. You're an amazing person.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, you were an amazing, great friend of my dad, very loyal and protective of his vision. And things were going to be amazing there had everything worked out like we'd hoped.
Yep.
But it sent us somewhere else in a bunch of different directions, and now here you are back, kind of back where you started with an opportunity to build something pretty amazing. So, like I said, it's been fun to watch you guys this year. I love y'all's crew chief.
Yeah,
Travis is
great.
Been a part of my life for several years now, and I've always believed in him. So it's great to see him get that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I'm wishing y'all the best. So
thank you, man.
Secretly pulling for you guys every Sunday to have success.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. It's another opportunity to take someone's vision and be a good lieutenant.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's life's a circle, and here we are.
That's right, man.
Happy about it.
Ty Norris on the Dale Jr. Download.